It is 8:18 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It's the 6th day of July, 2026. This is episode 1367 of Bitcoin and We're All Still Alive. It's me, your host, David Bennett, bringing you all the news that you can use about Bitcoin and macro from around the world. I got a few news stories out here. We're going to start with Red Team. If you haven't been keeping up with Coldcard stuff, which if you're listening to the show, I'm pretty sure you're keeping up with the Coldcard stuff, then you do know what Red Team is. And we're going to talk about where they're at right now. Coldcard exploit could boost demand for regulated Bitcoin exposure. Going to be our next story up. We got to talk about that a little bit. All right. Now, EU Watchdog warning scammers. They're warning that scammers are posing as crypto firms after the MiCA deadline. MiCA is that markets and crypto thing that they got going on in the EU. And somehow or another, somebody's figured out how to scam crypto firms with this MiCA thing. It should be interesting to watch. We'll talk a little bit more about the whole Coldcard thing when it comes to these some of these tests that are being done by people putting up sats in with affected firmware, building seeds out of affected firmware, just to see if those sats get taken. And there's we got a little blurb about that. And then in the second part of the show, I want to revisit the warrant canary that I was talking about yesterday, because I've still got a couple of things to say about that. Then White House and the Clarity Act. I never figure out where these guys are. I mean, is it Friday is the last day? Now it appears that today is the last day, and then there's still talk about them going into the weekend and through next week. I mean, dude, do you guys just not have hours? Or, I mean, I guess I'm kind of asking too much from something like the United States Congress. But, some kind of, I don't know. It just seems weird that there's not a day, like a single day that's it, man. It's Friday and we're not going to be back in session until whenever we're going to be back in session. And then there's a day for that to come back in session. So, we're still working the whole Clarity Act thing as of right now. Russia signs a crypto law. It is now live and in the ecosystem over there. And then the yen stablecoin. And I'm still trying to figure out how anybody in their right mind would try to build a stablecoin off of the yen, which is a fiat currency that is not stable. Well, we'll get into it. So Bitcoin Red Team, let's start out here. Juan Galt from Bitcoin Magazine. Bitcoin Red Team finds 85 critical flaws across 390 open source repos after the Coldcard exploit. Rallied by the recent and catastrophic vulnerability in Coldcard hardware wallets exploited to the tune of over $100 million, the Bitcoin community has rallied to prevent future critical bugs in the industry's open source software. Public service announcement: any users of Coldcard wallets that have not migrated your funds, please do so now. Either use another hardware wallet from a reputable company, which at this point kind of looks like anything that's not CoinKite, or go to or have a third party send it to Coinbase. Usually if you've listened to the show for any length of time, I tell you not to do that. I think we're going to just put that, I'm just going to put that into the drawer of my nightstand for now. Your safety is paramount. And I don't think that there's an issue holding your Bitcoin for a little while until you can sort things out at a third custody. If it has to be Coinbase, fine. I'd rather it be something like Unchained, which is a Texas company, and I'm a Texan, and I'm doing my best to one of these days get back to living in Texas. I still don't know why how it is that I ever left, but whatever. Unchained is a Texas company. There's also River. You could also custody at Strike or something like that. But you got to figure out where you're comfortable. Okay. But please, if you're still using a Coldcard, just get it off. The CoinKite at this point, I don't want to find. Well, I can hear what you're saying. If it's not the firmware 4.0, then I'm safe. Well, are you? We thought we were safe with 4.0.1, and that turned out not to be the case. Is there going to be something found in firmware that is below? I feel better not having any of my Bitcoin on a CoinKite product at this point. Sad, but it's true. Anyway, continuing on, led by Callie, software engineer, avid vibe coder, and creator of the Android version of BitChat, and Rob Hamilton, the CEO of AnchorWatch, a Bitcoin self-custody insurance company, the Bitcoin Red Team has now secured funding with over $40,000 spent in artificial intelligence tokens to audit over 390 open source repositories across Bitcoin. Pause to say they can only audit the open source repositories. Why? Because they're open source. Just let's really start trying to understand what open source really does mean. Not just code viewable, but fully open sourced projects. Anyway, colloquially called the Bitcoin Red Team, with memes about Rob Hamilton and Callie now being the CEO and CTO of Bitcoin, this AI-driven security audit is having a serious impact across the industry. Just a few days ago, buried in the news of ongoing thefts of Bitcoin from Mark III plus cold cards due to an RNG bug, Boltz Exchange announced it would be pausing operations to catch up with AI-driven hacking attempts. Quote, 27 and a half hours in, we filed 4,962 findings across 390 projects, 85 critical and 635 high severity issues. We're at 2.31 H plus C findings. Oh, I guess high severity and critical. So 2.31 high severity and critical findings per person per hour, said Callie in the most recent update on Red Team efforts to shore up the industry's cybersecurity. The Red Team security review effort is using models like Kimi K3, GPT-Sol, Fable, Opus, and GLM 5.2, some of the most expensive and cutting-edge models on the market. At first, access to OpenAI and Anthropic models was limited, leading to an over-reliance on Chinese open-source models, a fact which many in the industry lamented and saw as a bad omen for United States AI dominance. But as the Red Team project grew in influence since last week's Coldcard hack, connections have been established and confirmed with OpenAI, giving Red Team access to GPT-Sol. Hamilton's mention of Fable in his August 4th tweet suggests access to Anthropic has also been established. Expenses, which were last tallied at over $40,000, have been covered by OpenSats, a nonprofit 501c3 organization dedicated to funding open source Bitcoin development projects. The Bitcoin Red Team does not currently have a website, nor do they have a GitHub repository to link to, but the team is made up of many individuals within the Bitcoin industry. Individuals publicly thanked for their support included, but are not limited to, Daniel Brozani, Lyle Pratt, Stu TXO, Ben the Carmen, and the Simple Kid. Hamilton shared that a custom harness has been built and is evolving quickly, made up at one point of 171,600 lines of code. The harness is designed to identify and test critical Bitcoin software libraries and high load bearing code, identify and document vulnerabilities, reproduce them, and package the proven data into useful reports. ultimately delivering the information responsibly to the engineers in the industry. Hamilton also shared that Red Team intends to open source the harness such that Bitcoin companies can run it against their closed source code. Red Team is actively reaching out to relevant open source projects with critical vulnerabilities discovered, leading to a broad sense of dread from engineers in the industry when they receive cold, direct messages from Hamilton or Callie, as seen in various humorous screenshots shared on social media. Among the key insights shared by Red Team publicly, as this AI-driven security update of Bitcoin FOSS takes place, FOSS being free and open source software, Hamilton shared that engineers with specific subject matter could sometimes yield high-value results from the harness, which might otherwise, quote, smell out something is wrong, end quote, but might be missing niche context. An insight which speaks to the importance of having human intelligence and human experience work hand in hand with artificial intelligence to efficiently identify critical vulnerabilities. Hamilton also ended a multi-day Red Team effort after the Coldcard hack with some personal notes. He said that the discovered vulnerability in Coldcard random number generators and the consequent exploitation of the bug by hackers had been a spiritual attack on Bitcoin and the self-custody ethos of the industry. Quote, I mean that in a literal sense of the words, end quote. After expressing grief for the losses experienced by many Bitcoiners during this now historic hack, Hamilton closed his tweet with a tone of hardened resolution. Quote, while things are not easy right now, I have the highest conviction ever in my life that the idea and technology of Bitcoin is worth fighting for. To that end, there is no Bitcoin without self-custody. This is non-negotiable. That's the end of the article. So that's what Red Team is out there doing. Now, I had a question posed to me on Nostr. Yeah, well, where's the reports? Well, they're not going to release that yet. One of these days they will. And it actually may not even be them that decides to release the reports. And you may ask yourself why. If let's say that Rob Hamilton and Callie and the rest of the Red Team were just releasing the reports of every critical vulnerability they found out in the wild, out in the open, to the public, at the same time that they release it to the engineers of the projects. At that point, it's a race against time to build an exploit against whatever critical vulnerability they found. That is why Red Team is not saying, hey, here's the exact place here's the exact line of code that you need to look at, that's got the vulnerability in this particular project, and then name the project by name. That would be terrible form. That is not responsible disclosure. Responsible disclosure here seems to be what they're doing. Well, actually, responsible disclosure, we know what that is. It means you get in contact with the team that's got the vulnerability that you found. You tell that team what the hell it is you found, where to find it, how to reproduce it, all the things. You don't tell anybody else but that team. You don't tell one of your buddies. Everybody on Red Team pretty much knows the same shit, but it's not like Callie is going to reach out to somebody else in the industry that is completely unaffected and has nothing to do with Red Team and has nothing to do with the company in which the critical vulnerability was found in their source code, and tell them what they found. If they were doing that, that would not be responsible disclosure. All right. So as far as I know, and yes, I'm not part of Red Team. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but the reason that you don't have a detailed report of which company is affected, what device is affected, what projects are on the line, all that stuff is because of responsible disclosure. They have to disclose what they find to the people that can fucking fix it before anybody else knows what the hell's going on. Otherwise, it would just be a race against time, because at that point, think about it this way. like if we go back, if we look at the headline, right? 85 critical flaws across 390 open source repos. Could you imagine what it would look like if they said, and here is exactly where they are in exactly which repos from exactly these projects at the same time that they released it to the project team leads? It would be a fiasco. So right now, all I can really advise is to be patient. At one point or another, some of these teams may very well decide to say, here's what red team found, where we feel safe in disclosing this now. Here's how we fixed it. Everybody, before we even released it, the firmware was released, and we let 6 months go by with constant emails and constant warnings and constant this and constant that to update your firmware or whatever before we tell the public what the critical vulnerability actually was. It is not surprising behavior that nobody really knows exactly what the 85 critical flaws are or what projects they affect. If you did, then we would be very, very angry at Red Team. That's sort of where I'm going on this. But there's one other thing that I want to say before we move to the next story. Let's see. Yeah, I actually covered it right here because I was going to say ultimately delivering the information responsibly to engineers in the industry. That's who we're talking about. The engineers in the industry are the people that are behind each one of these projects where critical vulnerabilities were found. I doubt very seriously that there will ever be a detailed report directly from Red Team itself, even after 6 months or a year or whatever. They're just probably going to say, nope. If Project XYZ wants to tell you what we found, that's their business. Because otherwise, you end up in a very dark and libelous position if something went wrong. So just, everybody calm down. Staying with the Coldcard exploit, it could boost demand for regulated Bitcoin exposure, according to analysts. And this is out of CoinDesk, written by Will Canny. The Coldcard wallet exploit, which saw investors' Bitcoin drained from their wallets, highlights the risks some investors face with self-custody. And it could bolster demand for spot exchange-traded funds and be positive for some crypto-related equities, according to Wall Street analysts. Just don't like this. Investment bank Cantor said that the breach may reinforce the appeal for publicly traded crypto firms linked to institutional adoption. The bank said that the exploit could drive Coldcard users toward managed custody providers, potentially benefiting firms including Robinhood Markets, Coinbase Global, BitGo Holdings, Bullish, eToro Group, and Gemini Space Station through increased customer inflows. Quote, the read-through is second order, but we would expect that token flows to custodians and exchanges will increase following the hack, said Nico, can't pronounce his last name, a digital asset specialist, said in a Wednesday note to clients. The exploit allowed hackers to steal Bitcoin from users who had adopted for self-custody, underscoring that holding one's own private keys still requires trust in the hardware and software used to generate and manage those keys. The exploit, which researchers say stemmed from a flaw in the wallet's firmware, has resulted in at least 1,816 Bitcoin worth about $114 million being drained from more than 5,200 addresses since July the 30th, underscoring risks even self-custodied asset face when wallet security is compromised. FRNT Financial echoed that view, saying the exploit exposed a key trade-off in self-custody. While many Bitcoin holders prefer to control their own assets, they still place their trust in the hardware and the software used to generate private keys. The reaction within the BTC community to the exploit was one of heartbreak, FRNT wrote in a Wednesday report, noting Many affected users had followed long-standing best practices around self-custody. The firm compared the incident to the 2023 Milk SAD exploit, in which flawed key generation led to the theft of roughly $900,000 in digital assets. Rather than undermining self-custody altogether, FRNT said it expects the latest breach to spur wallet providers to strengthen their products as users demand greater security assurances. For investors unwilling to accept the operational risks of managing private keys, the growing availability of spot Bitcoin ETFs provide an increasingly attractive alternative, FRNT said. And, well, that's the end of the article. And they're not wrong. That's the thing. You may hate everything about what I just said, and it doesn't make any difference. What these firms are saying is true. What this report is saying is true. This whole thing has already driven several thousand Bitcoin to be taken off of self-custody wallets and put onto either some kind of custodian, either an exchange or just something like River or Unchained. And this, it's not good. It's not good because as much as I just told you at the front of the show, hey man, if you haven't gotten your shit off of Coldcard, use Unchained because they're a Texas company. It doesn't mean that Unchained couldn't get a warrant served on their ass about your Bitcoin, because at that point, you're going to end up KYCing all of your Bitcoin. See, this is the trade-off. And it's heartbreaking that somebody like Rodolfo Novak turned out to be the scum-sucking miscreant that he is, because he caused a lot of damage for the entire industry. And this is a man that will probably never be able to show his face in public ever again. I think he's in physical danger. And since we now know what Peter Gray, the chief technology officer of CoinKite, looks like, he's not safe either out in public. I mean, they're going to have to go, I don't know, buy an island together that nobody can access except by boat. Not even land a helicopter on it or something. It's got to be a teeny tiny, teensy weensy speck of land out there in the middle of nowhere. Because I really don't think it's going to be physically safe for either one of those two people to show their face in public ever, ever, ever again. And they're never going to see a Bitcoin conference again. I mean, by the time the next Bitcoin conference comes up, wherever it's supposed to be, maybe it's Nashville, I think. And I'm talking about the Bitcoin Magazine one, the largest one. First of all, it's not going to have the amount of people that usually attend, or, attendance in these things are always down during the bear market. But even then, you won't see a CoinKite kiosk. That company's gone. And right now, they're just holding on by their teeth because there's still a couple of good people at CoinKite that are doing nothing but trying to help customers. Hats off to them, but as far as Novak and Peter Gray are concerned, they can go fuck themselves to death. I'm actually shocked that these two human garbage scows were really as bad as so many people tried to say. Constant reminders of Novak's attack on any other hardware wallet. It wasn't just Seed Signer he was attacking. Turns out he was attacking everyone. I saw a couple of them, but I didn't realize that it was literally every hardware wallet project Novak was actively attacking, as far as like bad, releasing bad press or saying bad things about the team members or whatever. And it's completely unacceptable, but it drives Bitcoin from the hands of regular people who thought that they were safe into the hands of KYC exchanges and third-party custodians. Because as much as I like Unchained and River, dude, it's KYC. They are regulated custodians. And if you, let's say that you worked for 10 years to build a stack and you survived, and all of that stack is non-KYC Bitcoin, The second you send it to these custody guys, it's going to be KYC Bitcoin. It makes you wonder if there's some tinfoil hattery going on that needs to be examined. Like all the time Novak was really working for the CIA and this was a way to KYC all this non-KYC Bitcoin. I don't know. I kind of don't think so, but clearly I've been wrong before, so take what I say with a grain of salt right now. Let's move on to the EU. Watchdogs warn scammers are posing as crypto firms and regulators after the MiCA deadline, according to the Financial Times. Timmy Shin, writing for The Block. EU financial watchdogs have warned of a rise in scams after fraudsters began exploiting the markets and crypto assets regulation by impersonating crypto firms and regulators. The Financial Times reported Thursday that EU officials said scammers are targeting users of crypto exchanges that failed to secure authorization by the July 1st deadline under MiCA. Exchanges that secured MiCA authorization can operate across the EU under a single regulatory regime, while crypto firms left without licenses must wind down or restrict services to European Union clients. The moment has presented an opportunity for scammers more than usual, said Stephanie Pontezio, executive director of the Markets Intermediaries and Markets Infrastructure Supervision Directorate at Autorité des Marchés Financiers, the French financial regulator. She said that the watchdog has identified cases where suspects posed as AMF staff and told customers to transfer their assets to fraudulent websites. The AMF has also avoided setting an aggressive deadline for unlicensed exchanges to halt operations in an effort to limit such scams, according to the Financial Times. The AMF, that's that whatever we were talking about. Hold on. Let me get my shit together here for there's the Autorité des Marchés Financiers, that's the AMF. But now the Autorité Financiële Markten, a Dutch watchdog, also warned that bad actors may see an opportunity to scam investors who are looking for an alternative license provider, per the report. The European Securities and Markets Authority, the bloc's primary market regulator, they also reported that it was aware of fraudulent activities that exploited ESMA's logo to promote scams. MiCA took full effect on July the 1st after its final transition period came to an end, bringing crypto firms under a comprehensive regulatory framework. 320 entities have obtained MiCA licenses, according to a list updated on August the 5th, citing VASP net estimates that more than 1,700 would have to cease operations. So 320 got a license, but 1,700 did not. And if these scams are what they say they are, that is a lot of hunting grounds. Anyway, among the most notable case is Binance, which has failed to secure a MiCA license and missed the July 1st deadline. Okay. Now we start having to ask ourselves questions that are tinfoil hat questions. Was the MiCA license done to protect people, or was the MiCA license done to sow problematic issues inside of the cryptocurrency industry? Like, we knew that we weren't going to give Binance a license. And we know that when we did that, we were not giving a license to probably the largest exchange on the planet at that time. It's kind of smaller now because a lot of people fled because they can't work with them, right? Because of MiCA, right? But at the time, Binance, the largest, now still very, very large. That is rich hunting grounds. I have to ask the question, did the MiCA regulators think that maybe that this would induce a scam? Or were they completely clueless that this would ever occur? And there's no way for me to know. Businesses, these kinds of businesses and these kinds of regulations are weird, which is probably why you need Sagebrush Corporate Solutions if, for whatever reason, you want to incorporate. These guys are based in Wyoming, and they help founders form, maintain, and protect their companies with dependable registered agent services, clean filings, and same-day document delivery. They keep Wyoming simple, flat pricing, fast communication, and compliance reminders you can count on. Do you need an LLC? Do you need a C Corp? Do you need an S Corp? If you've been told, man, you really need to form an LLC, it is a place like Sagebrush Corporate Solutions that you actually go to do that. Now, these guys are based in Wyoming, and they take Bitcoin because they're in the Circle P. The Circle P is open for business. It's where I bring plebs just like you with goods and services to plebs just like you who want to buy said goods and services, but you will be buying it in Bitcoin, because if you're not selling it in Bitcoin, you're not in the Circle P. Sagebrush Corporate Solutions reached out to me and said, hey, we're plebs. We're small. We're tiny, but we offer these services. I've had to actually form an LLC once in my life, and I'm probably going to have to form another one. The first one I did it like everybody else did. I found a company in Delaware, and we incorporated in Delaware because reasons, right? Well, now you can do it in Wyoming. And Wyoming is a pretty, as far as Bitcoin is concerned, pretty open to the concept. So the next time that I form an LLC, I'm probably going to be looking at Sagebrush Corporate Solutions at sagebrushcs.com. That's sagebrushcs.com. Make sure that you use the code Bitcoin, and let's see, where's my thing? They gave me 10% off with Bitcoin. And so if you spend the money to do the letters of incorporation for your business, you'll get 10% off at sagebrushcs.com using code Bitcoin. And that's sagebrushcs.com, code Bitcoin. And from TFTC over on X or Twitter or whatever the hell it's called, it's Marty Bent's outfit. He's got a tweet here that I want to read you. A honeypot set up on a vulnerable Coldcard Mark III was hit by an attacker just 10 seconds after depositing sats. A pre-signed RBF, or replace by fee transaction, raced the attacker in real time and won, but the attacker came back with an even higher fee. The race continues until every sat is burned in mining fees rather than ending up in the hacker's wallet. So what the hell does it mean? All right, so somebody used a vulnerable Mark III Coldcard, which means that it had some firmware sometime after 4.0.0. And they built the keys using that firmware, which guarantees that it was not going to use the hardware's random number generator. It was going to fall back to a shitty way to do it with the software, giving you maybe 35 to 50 bits of entropy, which is trivial to break with a laptop, So they put 0.0001 Bitcoin into this. And they used exactly, I want to get the firmware here. They used firmware 4.0.1, which was the March 29th, 2021 upgrade that caused the whole problem in the first place. All right, so they put 0.0001 Bitcoin onto this address that was generated, and 10 seconds after that landed, that Bitcoin, those Satoshis landed at that address, it took 10 seconds for somebody to sweep that and take it for themselves. But it's a race against, this replace by fee. So they were monitoring this. I don't think it was TFTC that did it. Not sure, but it looks like somebody else did it. In either event, they're looking at it. 10 seconds happened. and they're like, oh, somebody's trying to sweep it. And they look at the fee that they were willing to pay the miners, and they said, well, we'll just RBF that and get it back to our own wallet. And they increased the amount of fees that they were willing to pay and reversed it back to the original address. Then the attacker saw that and came back and raised the fee above the replace by fee. So they did another replace by fee and increased the amount of Satoshis that they were willing to pay, to the point that it looks like they wanted to pay 82.4 sats per V-byte, which is 9,000 Satoshis, which is about $5.80 according to this screenshot. And that's what that last part of this tweet basically says, is the race continues until every sat is burned in mining fees rather than ending up in the hacker's wallet. Okay, the RBF foot race is interesting. But what's more interesting is it took only 10 seconds after it was deposited. How on earth do you think it only took 10 seconds for somebody to figure out that money was put in a vulnerable address? Because nobody was watching. This is what the AI bots are doing. Continuous scans of what's probably a growing list of potential vulnerable addresses, and it's just looking and looking and looking and rechecking any address that has been generated by these hackers using this 4.0.1 and above firmware crap. They've already built and compiled a list of potential vulnerable addresses. And at this point, they're just cycling through them, watching as they add more vulnerable addresses to it as those get built. And they're just cycling through, and it doesn't even take a human to do it. This is the world we live in now. And the second that bot, cycled through this one vulnerable wallet address that had just been built, it had just been built. It's not like they, let it go, right? Because they just built the wallet. And they immediately put sats on it. The bot immediately saw and then checked that transaction ID against the wallet address. And then either it was already on the list of vulnerable addresses, or they immediately set to work to try to break that. And it only took 10 seconds either way that they did it. It is an automated process at this point. And it will never go back to not being an automated process. These things are set in stone now. The only way to get away from this crap is building a wallet address from a competent hardware wallet manufacturer. And nobody else has been hit, because it doesn't appear that any other hardware wallet manufacturer has this fallback to shitty entropy, that they are all actually giving either 128-bit or 256 bits of entropy, which is more than the stars in the known universe, given the calculations that we know about. It's more than grains of sand on all the beaches of all the planets that we can figure that we might think might have sand on it. I mean, it is a huge, huge number. Some people say that it's more atoms. It's more, that number, like 2 raised to the 256 power, is more numbers than there are atoms of matter in the universe, which is a lot more than stars, right? But if you've only got 50 bits, 32 bits of entropy, dude, laptop, get that shit. 256 bits of entropy? Nope. That's you're not going to get that one. You're not going to get that one. And yes, this is not saying that quantum isn't going to be a problem, but we're going to have to wait and see about that one. The other way to add even extra security is get 3 hardware wallets from 3 different manufacturers, none of which would be Coldcard, and build a multi-sig wallet. No, I said it yesterday. We don't live in the age of lazy apathy bullshit anymore. Sloth is not going to work for us going forward. We're actually going to have to be attentive. Or you could send it to a custody guy like Unchained or River. You can get your Bitcoin insured and pay a monthly fee on insurance. And whatever it is that you sent them, is if it wasn't KYC'd or know your customer before, it will be after you send it to a custodian because they're all regulated. So this is where we live. I wish I had better news, but I can't tell you anything but the truth. Let's run the numbers. CNBC futures and commodities, Brent North Sea oil up 2.7% to 81.65 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate up 2 1/3 to 76.96. Natural gas is a hedge, 1 2/3 points to the downside at 2.64 per 1,000 cubic feet, and gasoline is up 2.8% to $2.91 a gallon. Merbon crude is up 1.7% to 79.32 a barrel. Metals are mixed. Palladium is up 0.7%. Gold is in the green, but barely. $4,306.06 per ounce. Platinum is down 1/3. Silver is down 1.15% to 61.57. Copper is down 0.5 point. Ag is mixed today. Biggest winner is sugar, 2.3% to the upside. Biggest loser is chocolate, 2.18% to the downside. Live cattle down 1 1/3. Lean hogs down 1/4 point. Feeder cattle down 1.16%. The S&P is crawling sideways, kind of in the red. NASDAQ is in the green, but crawling sideways. The Dow is down 0.5 point, and the S&P mini is up 1/3 of a point. And then Bitcoin is chilling out at $64,560. It's a $1.3 trillion market cap. You can get 15.3 ounces of your favorite shiny metal rock with your one Bitcoin, of which there are 20,066,382.39 of. Average fees per block are high, 0.03 Bitcoin taken in fees on a per block basis. Looks to be about 47 blocks carrying 91,000 unconfirmed transactions. Right now, waiting to clear at high priorities of 1 sat per VByte. Low priorities get you in at half that price. 928 exahashes per second is the security available on the Bitcoin network as of now. It remains, to me, unconcerning. The Bitcoin and podcast has a website. It's bitcoinandshow.com. There you can show me fiat love if you choose to do it that way. And you can support the show by buying one of the 2 tiers available. I've got like $5 per month. I've got a $50 per year. You don't get anything more than the free thing. It's just a way that I've set up that if you need to pay in fiat, to show your love for the show and what I do, you can go to bitcoinandshow.com. That's bitcoinandshow.com. Sign up. Give me your email. I won't give it to anybody else. I swear I will give you about 2 or 3 times a week. I'll take one of the shows and I will turn it into a small article along with a little bit of art that represents that article and a link to the show. So if you want to help me spread the word, you can just send the URL for that particular web page that you get through email to like family and friends and say, hey, on a daily basis, if you want to know what the hell's going on in Bitcoin, go here. And from Dead Canary, the only boost that I got is from Nick Dose. 254 lonely Satoshis. He says, cheers. But I say, sad puppy face. That's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use. We got warrant canaries back up today. Adam Simica has a tweet out here that I just want to read because it's kind of a reminder about what I was saying yesterday. He says, if we can't take warrant canaries seriously, then we don't deserve to be taken seriously ourselves. For your information, Samurai's canary expired. They dismissed it under duress. Turned out to be real. Bolts did the entire Bitcoin space a huge favor. We owe them our gratitude. Now he's talking about Bolt's warrant canary basically expiring and not being re-upped for 5 days. That's what he's talking about. Samurai, their warrant canary expired. They said they were going to put it back up, and that was in June of 2023, and we kind of all know what happened. And this is what I was saying about warrant canaries yesterday. Even though Bolts put their warrant canary back up, I have a hard time trusting that everything is fine, because the whole reason behind a warrant canary expiring is if you don't immediately put it back up and re-up it on the same day, hopefully even before the hour that it expires, if you don't re-up that for another 60 days or whatever it is your policy is, then how do I not know that something is very terribly wrong inside your organization? Did somebody force you to put a canary back up? Because that's what Adam's saying. I'm not sure, I don't know Adam Simica. He's just, for whatever reason, all over my feed. And it doesn't matter who he is. What he's saying is true. If we can't take warrant canaries seriously, then we don't deserve to take ourselves seriously. That's the whole job. The warrant canary has one job. It stays alive or it dies. When it dies, you can't resurrect it. Because at that point, you've got a zombie canary, and at that point, everything is suspect. Your canary died, dude. So I am sure, I want to be clear, I don't know any of the people at Bolts. I've never talked to them. I've never had a beer with them, so I don't know what their personalities are like. I have no idea if their re-upping of their warrant canary was above board and it was just a mistake or not. I don't know. I'm at this point, especially because of the whole Coldcard thing, I am at a point where I don't trust anything. Bolt's warrant canary died. The warrant canary that they have up right now is effectively a zombie canary. I don't trust it. And I don't know what Bolts would be able to do for me to trust it. It doesn't mean that I think everybody there is bad. It may have been an honest mistake, but dude, that is not a mistake that you can make. You have to have multiple alarms for multiple team members set so that they have 24 hours before the expiration of the canary to make sure that the canary is re-upped so that we can figure out, hey, and I'm sure there are people out there that will disagree with me on this, but I can't take Bolt's warrant canary seriously right now. I can't. Moving on to the White House reviewing Crypto Clarity Act ethics text ahead of the August deadline. Maybe it'll tell us where we're at. Matthew DeSalvo out of Bitcoin Magazine. Time is running out to get a vote on the long-awaited Crypto Clarity Act through bipartisan work, or though bipartisan work is intensifying with the White House reviewing the latest draft behind closed doors. Senator Thom Tillis said that bipartisan language drafted and sent to the White House last week is currently being reviewed. Quote, "We've got people working with White House right now. They're going through some of the lines of text right now." He was quoted and first reported by Punchbowl News senior reporter Brendan Penderson, whatever. Senate Majority Leader John Thune declined to file cloture on the crypto market structure bill Wednesday afternoon. That would be yesterday, according to Punchbowl News, leaving negotiators only a very narrow window to reach something resembling consensus. Thune had told reporters earlier in the day that he still hoped for a vote before the break, and Republican and Democrat staff reportedly held a flurry of meetings over the past 24 hours trying to close out remaining disagreements. Despite optimism last week from top crypto companies like Coinbase and backing from other major financial institutions, lawmakers appear to be prioritizing other bills to vote on before their 5-week break starting Thursday or Friday, because we don't know apparently when our own Congress actually takes a break. It's ridiculous. Anyway, Republicans like Senator Cynthia Lummis, that's her. That I had problems remembering her name yesterday. She said that Democrats are deliberately holding back the bill. And Senator Thom Tillis, who had been working with Democrats on ethics language for the bill, said the odds of a vote hinge on whether the Senate stays in Washington past its scheduled Thursday departure. Quote, if we are getting out on schedule, which would be tomorrow afternoon, I think it'd be a moonshot at this point, Tillis said. But, quote, there's still a chance if we're going to be delayed, particularly if we have to go into next week, end quote. Meanwhile, momentum for the bill is building outside the Senate floor. South Carolina Republican Darlene Graham posted on X in support of swift passage, framing the Clarity Act as central to President Trump's push to keep digital asset innovation inside the United States. She added that the Senate needs to deliver a bill that protects consumers, arms the law enforcement agencies, and gives the industry regulatory certainty, adding that she stands ready to back Senate Banking Chairman Tim Scott, Senator Cynthia Lummis, and the president in getting the legislation, quote, across the finish line. If cloture is filed Thursday, that would be today, a floor vote could still come as soon as this weekend, though a delay into next week may be the bill's best remaining shot at passage before the recess. So we still don't really know the timeline of when Congress goes home. It's today or Friday or possibly into the weekend or possibly next week. Nobody really knows. But we do know something about Russia. Russian president signs crypto law. Core rules take effect this year. Helen Part's Coin Telegraph, Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a law creating regulated framework for cryptocurrency markets inside that country. Putin signed the bill titled On Digital Currencies and Digital Rights into law on Tuesday, according to official records from the State Duma. The legislation establishes rules for crypto market participants, including exchanges, brokers, custodians, and other crypto service providers. The law requires crypto exchange operators to meet regulatory requirements and join a financial market self-regulatory organization. It limits retail investors to buying approved crypto assets, but you have to do it through intermediaries with an annual cap of $3,700 or 300,000 rubles per intermediary. So you can use more than one, I suppose. Qualified investors will be allowed to purchase any cryptocurrency without such restrictions. The core provisions of the law take effect September the 1st, 2026, while some measures, including rules for non-resident digital depositories, will take effect on July the 1st, 2027. The law also maintains a ban on using crypto assets to pay for goods and services inside Russia. The State Duma approved the legislation after final readings in late July. Under the law, the Bank of Russia will oversee the regulated crypto market, issue related rules, and determine which crypto asset licensed intermediaries or which crypto assets the licensed intermediaries can offer. So complete and total regulatory clarity over in Russia, and we don't even know when our Congress actually takes a recess. Not that, I'm not a fan of Putin, not a huge fan of Russia, but at least they seem to have that part of their world together. Yen stablecoin. Well, fuck it. I'll just read it first. Yen stablecoin issuer JPYC's Series B offering reaches $38 million, Ezra Reguera, Cointelegraph. Japanese yen stablecoin. That I'm just going to pause right there to say, how is that not oxymoronic? Whatever. Japanese yen stablecoin issuer JPYC has completed an extension of its Series B funding round, bringing the round's cumulative total to about 6 billion yen or $38 million. On Wednesday, the company said Japanese logistics group AZ Com Maura Holdings joined the round as a brand new investor. JPYC said it plans to use the proceeds to expand its financial and Web3 ecosystem and accelerate the adoption of its yen-pegged stablecoin. JPYC did not disclose the exact amount raised through the extension or the size of AZ/Com's investment. However, the round's cumulative total increased by about 1 billion yen from about 5 billion yen announced in May. It also didn't provide financial terms for the company's capital and business alliance. On July the 20th, Nikkei reported that AZ/Com was considering investing more than 1 billion yen in JPYC. AZ/Com was exploring the use of the stablecoin to pay about 2,300 delivery partners and contractors. Cointelegraph contacted JPYC for details about the investment and the partnership's planned applications, but had not received a response by publication. JPYC said Wednesday that combining its stablecoin with AZ/Com's logistics network could support on-chain finance, integrating commercial logistics and payment flows. And that's the end of the article. But it's not a stablecoin. They say it's a stablecoin, but it's really not. And honestly, this kind of opens up a whole can of worms when it comes to whether, is Circle and Tether, is it really stable? All we can really say is that it's a peg token. Stablecoin means it's stable. It imparts an inference to stability with the use of the word stable in front of coin. But, and as far as the US dollar is concerned, kind of stable. It's the most stable horse in the glue factory. We'll say it like that, but it's a fiat currency. If what you really mean by stability is a continual stable loss of purchasing power, then then all stable coins are stable. But compared to, at that point, compared to each other, only the US dollar would be the quote unquote gold standard. But the yen's volatility against the US dollar, which is what all fiat currencies are basically compared to, because the US dollar is still the world's reserve currency, then the yen is not stable. It's not stable at all. In fact, it's so unstable that the United States Treasury Department, a foreign institution, a foreign financial institution at the highest level, had to step in and help Japan stabilize their yen. And it's not exactly working all that well. It's working somewhat, but it's not exactly working the way that people, said that it was going to work. They still can't get this shit under control. So using the term stablecoin at this point, I think it's a bad term. Fiat currency pegged token. US dollar pegged token. Not stablecoin. US dollar pegged token like USDC, USDT. That would be Tether. Yen pegged token. That would be this JPYC. But stablecoin at this point is a terrible term to use. Just keep it in mind. I'm not going to change anything. Nobody's going to say, hey, listen to Bitcoin and now we're not going to call it stablecoins anymore. No, they are. But please understand that word is going to have less and less and less meaningfulness as time goes on. All right, that is the end of today's episode. I hope you found it enjoyable as well as informative. If you did, if you think you got some value out of today's show, please, go to bitcoinandshow.com and show me some love. Or you can just do it through Fountain app, like any kind of podcasting 2.0 app. You can stream me Satoshis. They all have wallets because that's what a major feature of podcasting 2.0 is direct integration with Bitcoin, specifically via the Lightning Network. So you can just stream me Satoshis, like 10 Satoshis for every minute that you listen to, or you can throw me a boostergram and give me a message, like announce your daughter's wedding or something like that. Or you can go to Bitcoin and Show and do the whole thing in fiat. I'm trying to give you as many different outlets to show me love as I possibly can. So do so. If you found it valuable, then send some value back. And if you can't do that, then just make sure all your friends and family know that if you want to learn about what's going on in Bitcoin today, go to Bitcoin and I will see you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.